In this video, you will learn the story of Clara Dumont, a 42-year-old history teacher living in Lyon, France. During a quiet lunch with friends from church, Clara suffered a serious accident that left her clinically dead for 4 minutes. In that brief interval, she had a supernatural experience that would change her life forever. Clara claims to have been taken to a place of absolute peace, where she met Jesus face to face. There, she received an urgent message about the future of humanity, a prophetic revelation concerning times of scarcity and the need for both spiritual and practical preparation. This is an intimate, true, and deeply moving account of courage, faith, and deliverance that will touch your soul. If you value stories that strengthen faith and bring hope amidst challenges, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future testimonies. Also, please leave a like, it helps us immensely in reaching more people with this message, and let us know in the comments which city or country you are watching from. We would love to know how far this story is traveling. May this story speak to your heart. My name is Clara Dumont. I am 42 years old and a history teacher here in Lyon, France. I always led an ordinary life. I would wake up early, teach classes at school, participate in church activities on Sundays, and have lunch with my evangelical friends after the service. I was never the type of person to seek out extraordinary spiritual experiences. My faith was solid, yet quiet, you know? The kind of faith built over the years, made of simple prayers, familiar verses, and a few moments of doubt here and there. I never imagined that a mundane tragedy, a silly slip by the edge of a swimming pool, would mark the beginning of the strangest and the most transformative event of my life. Even today, when I try to explain it, it feels like I'm recounting something that I'm not even sure anyone will believe. It was a Sunday in July. The heat was unbearable, even for someone who is French and accustomed to dry summers. After the service, as usual, I invited some friends from church to my home for lunch. It was a simple meal with plenty of conversation, and afterwards, we decided to cool off a bit in the backyard pool. I remember walking and chatting with Marie, a very close friend, when I slipped on a puddle I hadn't seen. It happened in a split second. I felt my body spin, followed by sharp pain as I struck my head against the stone paving. From that moment on, I saw nothing with my physical eyes, yet I began to see everything differently, as if I had stepped out of my body, and that is where it all began. When I realized I was no longer in my body, I felt a mixture of fear and calm all at once. It's hard to explain, but there was no pain, no confusion, no despair. It was as if gravity had ceased to exist and I was floating above myself. I saw my body lying near the pool, blood slowly spreading across the stone, and Marie kneeling beside it, her trembling hands trying to staunch the wound. Pierre was on his phone, shouting to emergency services, while the others seemed frozen between prayer and panic. I was witnessing all of this from above, yet for some reason, it didn't frighten me. It was as if I had lost all fear of death. An absolute silence enveloped everything, even amidst the voices and shouting. It was a silence that came from within, a peace so profound it seemed at odds with the chaos of the scene, and it was in that silence that I felt a pull, as if a gentle force were calling me away from that place. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but I soon realized I wasn't. I was being drawn through a tunnel of light. The light didn't hurt my eyes, it was welcoming and vibrant, as if it held a living presence within it. I felt warmth, not physical heat, but a warmth that radiated from the soul. The higher I rose, the stronger the sensation became of being embraced by something invisible. Then I sensed a figure beside me. It was neither a shadow nor a silhouette, it was someone. The presence was with me, and even before seeing his face, I knew who he was. A profound peace washed over me, moving me to tears, or at least the sensation of weeping, for there, amidst that light, I understood I was in the presence of Jesus. He did not need to say who he was, I simply knew. That gaze is impossible to forget. I cannot explain what his eyes were like, for they were more than just eyes. It was as if he saw everything about me in a single instant, my flaws, my choices, my fears, my faith, my most secret prayers, and yet looked upon me with a love no human being has ever been able to give me. I remained still, or perhaps floating, I am not sure, gazing at him, unable to speak. He drew near slowly with a gentle smile, and when he spoke my name, Clara, it was as if my entire soul had been. I was deeply moved. I had read stories of people who saw Jesus, but I never imagined that if it happened to me, I would feel no shame, fear, or judgment, only pure, direct, and complete love, and it was at that moment that everything around me began to change. The intense light gave way to a place that looked like a garden, yet unlike any we know on earth. It was more vibrant, the colors seemed to breathe. The flowers held a fragrance so natural and potent that it stirred the soul. Sounds came from every direction, as if nature itself were singing softly, ceaselessly. Jesus walked beside me, and with every step he took, the place seemed to come even more alive. I gazed around in silence, trying to memorize every detail, knowing it wouldn't last. He stopped near a large tree, sat on a stone bench, and invited me to sit beside him. It was then that he looked at me again, this time with a more serious expression, and said something that completely changed the way I view the world. Clara, I am going to show you something about the future of the earth, something I need you to share when you return. At the words "when you return," my heart went cold. I didn't want to think about going back. Everything there was so perfect, so secure, yet he seemed to know exactly what I was feeling. Unhurriedly, he extended his hand and pointed ahead, like an invisible screen unfolding in the air. Images began to appear. At first, they were ordinary scenes: families gathered for dinner, children running in the yard, crowded supermarkets, people buying food as if supplies would never run out. Then he spoke. This is the present time, a time of abundance. Many eat their fill, markets are stocked, and homes are comfortable. But this is going to change. The images began to transform. What had been abundance turned into scarcity. Market shelves stood empty. People fought over a single package of rice. Streets filled with long lines. Mothers weeping, clutching nearly empty bags. I saw confusion, tension, and fear etched on people's faces, and deep down, I felt that this was not merely a prediction, it was a warning. Frightened, I looked at him and asked, "Lord, is this really going to happen?" Jesus looked at me with sadness, yet also with firmness, just as I revealed to Pharaoh through Joseph that 7 years of abundance would be followed by 7 years of famine. I am now showing this to you, not to cause panic, but to prepare you. I was left speechless. It was too much information, too heavy a burden. It was as if an immense responsibility had been placed upon my shoulders right there on that stone bench, in the presence of Christ himself. And the hardest part was that, even as I felt small, I also felt that he trusted me, that somehow, I would be able to handle it. The images grew increasingly harrowing. It was like witnessing an ancient prophecy unfold before my eyes, only this time, in our own era. Jesus showed me scenes of people trying to plant crops in parched soil, others weeping before empty shelves, and many kneeling in prayer, not knowing what to do. Then, the scenes shifted to something more peaceful. 9 minutes. Simple backyard gardens, small groups growing food together, shelves quietly stocked with grains, canned goods, and provisions, and he said, "Whoever heeds this warning and acts wisely will face what is to come with greater peace." He spoke of storing non-perishable foods, learning to plant, and caring for the land. He showed cans of beans, rice, oats, and preserves, simple things, yet essential. He said that times of abundance would cause many to forget prudence, and then, in a firm voice, he recited the verse from Genesis 41 verse 30, 7 years of famine will come, and all the abundance will be forgotten. As he spoke, the words seemed to pierce my mind and go straight to my heart. It was not merely instruction, it was a calling. Afterward, we walked through another, much more cultivated garden. It was a place with greenhouses, vegetable patches, and fruit trees. The land seemed alive. I saw human hands tending the earth with dedication, and Jesus explained to me how the land has its own cycles. He showed me that some plants thrive in the cold, while others prefer the heat. He taught me that even winters could be utilized wisely. He pointed to some leaves and said that many of them possess healing properties. Then he quoted Ezekiel 47 verse 12 regarding fruit for food and leaves for medicine. He picked an oregano leaf and spoke of its power to strengthen the body. It was remarkable. It wasn't just faith, it was practice, it was care for both body and spirit. In that moment, everything began to make sense. It wasn't just about surviving what was to come, but about trusting God and acting responsibly. With every teaching, I felt that this was not merely a message for me. It was as if Jesus were handing me an instruction manual for the difficult days ahead, not a technical manual, but one that was both spiritual and practical. He spoke of faith, yes, but also of action, responsibility, and preparation. He stated clearly that many would ignore the warning, dismissing it as exaggeration or paranoia, and that by the time scarcity arrived, it would be too late for many. Then, he looked me in the eye and spoke firmly, "Tell my people to prepare while there is still time," not out of fear, but with wisdom. I could only listen and absorb it all. My body, or whatever form I held at that moment, seemed to vibrate with every word, and as he spoke, more images appeared, families helping one another, communities sharing food, people praying together during hard times. Jesus showed not only the pain but also the hope. Afterward, we remained silent for a moment. The garden around us was still alive, as if reflecting his words. Even in harsh times, there would still be life, still be fruit. Then Jesus stood up. I rose as well, not quite grasping what would come next. That was when he stepped closer, took my hands with a calm firmness, and said, "Clara, you must go back. It is not yet your time. But now you have a mission." I felt a tightness in my chest. I didn't want to leave that place. How could anyone want to leave a place like that? But I understood that I wasn't being rejected, I was being sent forth, and in a way, that gave me strength. He didn't choose me because I was perfect. He chose me because he trusted that I would speak. Before I left, he gave me one last piece of advice. He said I needed to learn about food, its properties and cycles, and that knowledge which seemed trivial, like knowing when to plant a carrot or how to store a can of beans, would prove precious in the times to come. Do not despise the simple things, he said. Faith grows best when accompanied by prudence. After that, he embraced me, and I swear, I had never felt anything like it. It wasn't merely physical. It was as if every wound in my soul had been cradled within that embrace. There was no more fear, no doubt, nor that anguish one sometimes feels without knowing its source. He held me close with affection and spoke in the firmest, yet sweetest, voice I had ever heard. "Go in peace, Clara, I will be with you until the end." And then, everything began to fade away. The garden, the light, the sound, even the warmth itself, everything slowly dimmed, as if I were being pulled back. The next thing I felt was a sharp pain in my head and the sound of hurried voices around me. I opened my eyes with difficulty and saw cold lights on a hospital ceiling. A voice shouted, then returned, and I felt someone checking my pulse. It was a doctor. Later, I learned that my heart had stopped for nearly 4 minutes and that I had been declared clinically dead. They said it was a miracle that I had come back, and even more so that I suffered no brain damage, but I knew it wasn't luck. I returned because I needed to tell what I had seen. I remained under observation for a few days, and as soon as I had the strength, I began to write everything down, every detail, every phrase, every scene. I couldn't let any of it be lost. When I returned home, everything seemed the same, yet I was no longer the same person. Ordinary things, like opening the fridge or seeing a fully stocked supermarket, began to bother me, not in a negative way, but in the sense of realizing just how much we live on autopilot, assuming we'll always have everything. I started looking at my backyard differently. Before, it was just a nice spot with a pool and some patio furniture. Now, I saw potential there. I began researching vegetable gardens, cultivation, and seeds. I took courses, watched videos, and read articles. Every new piece of information seemed to align perfectly with what Jesus had shown me. I understood now why he had been so specific. It wasn't to cause alarm, but to provide time to act wisely. I started planting little by little, tomatoes, lettuce, carrots, basil, nothing grand, but done with care. I spoke to some people at church. Some believed immediately, others smiled with that look that said, she must have really hit her head hard, but I didn't push it. I simply shared. Whoever wanted to listen could listen. I began stockpiling non-perishable food, medicines, and basic supplies, but not out of panic. It was like preparing an ark, you know? A preparation made with peace. Gradually, some fellow church members began asking questions and showing interest. That's how we formed a small group for preparation, not just physical, but spiritual as well. We began to pray more deeply and study the Bible with fresh eyes, and everything Jesus had shown me started to make sense, made even more sense. It wasn't about stockpiling food. It was about sowing faith, a faith that doesn't crumble when the shelves run bare, a faith that trusts even when everything around you seems to scream the opposite. As the months went by, I realized how God was using that experience to shape me from within. My faith, which was already there, took on a new dimension. I prayed differently. I read the Bible with a new kind of attentiveness, as if the words were leaping off the pages to speak directly to me. Verses I had once read out of habit now carried weight and urgency. One of them kept echoing in my mind for days. Matthew 6:25-26. Do not worry about what you will eat or wear. Jesus had quoted that passage to me before saying goodbye, and that was when I understood. It isn't about having everything guaranteed, it's about trusting that, even in times of scarcity, He does not abandon His own. It doesn't mean everything will be easy, but rather that, with faith and preparation, we won't be alone. That certainty became my foundation. On days when fear takes hold, I return to that memory. There was a night, a few months later, when I dreamed of that same garden. I don't know if it was just a dream or something more, but I woke up with a profound sense of connection. It was as if Jesus was saying, keep going, because, yes, sometimes weariness sets in, and sometimes routine tries to erase what we've lived through, but I knew I couldn't let this become a forgotten memory. I began giving short talks at church and was invited to speak to other groups. I realized that the testimony Jesus had sent me to share was actually reaching the people who needed to hear it. It wasn't about forcing anyone to believe, it was simply about planting the seed, and, interestingly, I began to see fruit, people planting their own gardens, others praying more, and some writing to tell me they felt moved to change their lives. For me, that makes it all worthwhile. A curious thing is that, even after all this, I didn't turn into a mystic or someone constantly looking for signs. On the contrary, my faith became simpler, firmer, yet simpler. I began to value the little things, a meal prepared with love, a sincere prayer, a conversation between fellow believers. I stopped worrying so much about what others think and started focusing on what I can do with what I've been given. I don't have all the answers. To this day, I don't know why Jesus chose me, of all people, to show that to. I'm just a teacher, an ordinary woman. But perhaps that's precisely the reason, because if I could understand and take action, anyone can, and if I can help even one person truly prepare, with both faith and action, then it will have been worth it. Sometimes people ask me if I think the difficult times Jesus revealed have already begun. Honestly, I don't know, but I do see the signs: rising prices, food shortages in some places, and people becoming increasingly distressed. Yet, what worries me most isn't the economy, it's the spirit. So many people are living without direction, without purpose, thinking that all this is just another rough patch, and that is precisely what Jesus made clear to me. It isn't just about food, it's about faith. It's about who will keep trusting even when the table is empty, who will keep praying even when there is no immediate answer. I don't tell my story to instill fear, I tell it because I believe there is still time to change, to prepare, and to seek God in truth. While we still have this time, we need to use it wisely. There was a moment, nearly a year after the experience, when I thought about stopping the storytelling. I believed I had perhaps done my part, but then, during a quiet service, a young man I didn't even know approached me at the end and said, "I heard your story," and I started praying, truly praying, for the first time in my life. that completely disarmed me. I went home that day weeping like a child. I understood that my role wasn't to measure results, but to obey. Jesus showed me something that many people will never see, and that carries weight, a privilege, yes, but also a commitment. And even though life has returned to normal, nothing is the same as before. Every morning, as I water my garden or organize the pantry, I remember that it all began in a split second, with a single slip, and had I actually died, perhaps this warning would never have been given. To this day, I don't fully understand why it happened to me. I'm not a preacher, a missionary, or anyone of importance in the church, but perhaps that is precisely the point. I am just like anyone else. I work, pay bills, have doubts, and suffer, yet I believe, and Jesus chose to reveal this to me to show that he speaks to ordinary people too, that he is present in the details, and that when he gives a warning, it is not in vain. It is not meant to cause fear, but to offer time. I was never the same again, not because I saw heaven or was with Jesus, but because I understood the value of being alive with a purpose, because today I know that scarcity doesn't begin in the pantry, but in the heart, and if the heart is steadfast, everything else falls into place. That is the faith I have held ever since. There are days when I wake up and it all seems like a distant dream, the light, the garden, the gaze of Jesus, his words. Sometimes I wonder, was it truly real? But then I recall the details, the scent of the leaves, the texture of the stone where I sat with him, the way my name sounded on his lips. No one could invent that, and there is something else, the silence, the same profound silence I felt when I left my body, that stays with me even now. From time to time, amidst the bustle, a calm silence emerges that seems to say, remember what I showed you. And I pause. I cannot always explain to people what that experience was like. It is not something that fits neatly into a lunch conversation or a social media post, yet it is something that has taken root deep inside me and will not leave. I do not live in anticipation of something terrible happening tomorrow. That is not the point, but I know it will come. I do not know when, or how, or on what scale, but I know it because I saw it. I heard it from the lips of Jesus. I cannot live as if I did not know this, nor can I demand that others believe simply because I experienced it. What I can do is tell the story and let the listener decide what to do with it, whether to ignore it, mock it, dismiss it as a delusion, or pause, reflect, and begin to prepare. To me, that is faith, obeying even when it seems strange, acting even when no one else does, and believing even when everything suggests otherwise. And the strangest thing of all is that I never had another supernatural experience after that day. Nothing, no visions, no special dreams, no signs. It was as if everything happened all at once, followed by silence, as if Jesus had said everything he needed to say, and that was it. And I was left with this light burden, if that makes sense, of carrying a message that isn't mine, yet has become a part of who I am. Sometimes I think this happened just to truly wake me up, to take my faith off autopilot, and it worked. If you've made it this far and listened to all of this, perhaps it's because you needed to hear it, not because I am special, but because the message is, I don't want you to panic, or to drop everything and flee to the mountains. I simply want you to reflect on the state of your faith, on how you are using the time you still have, and on what truly matters. Because if a day comes when everything is stripped away, as Jesus showed me, the only thing left will be trust in God, and that trust needs to be firm right now. When scarcity arrives, and it will, the only ones who will overcome it are those who have already learned to depend on heaven before everything collapses down here. Clara's story reminds us that true faith is born not only in moments of calm but often in the midst of the unexpected, even in the face of death. She received not just a new chance at life, but a mission, to warn, prepare, and strengthen hearts. Her experience is a call for all of us to live with purpose and faith, keeping our eyes fixed on what truly matters. What did you think of this revelation? Do you believe God still speaks to people today? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and if you haven't subscribed yet, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on life-changing content like this. If you enjoy our work and would like to support us in a special way, click the join button and become part of this mission with us. We've also included a suggestion for the next video, which will appear on your screen. May God bless you, and see you next time.